Katrina, knock knock, are you there?
I'm here.
Oh man, that's awesome. So glad you're here. I was looking forward to tonight's conversation. I know a bunch of other people looking forward to it as well. First of all, I just want to thank everyone in our group that is supporting our group. What's better than one black millionaire? You guys are doing an incredible job of just keeping the energy going, sharing your expertise, sharing your knowledge, sharing your experiences. So I just want to say, from the bottom of my heart, thank you, thank you, thank you for doing that. And please continue to do that. Tonight, we got a conversation about, and I said in the post, I said, if you're a small business, you need to be front and center. So hopefully, my small business owners, you're front and center because tonight we have Katrina Harrell, who's going to be talking to us about some government grants and loans that can help us uh, continue to get through, the challenges that we're experiencing, mostly, things that have caused us to slow down as a result primarily of the pandemic. So, Katrina, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing this information that I know is going to definitely help some people. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Rod. I really appreciate it. And I was excited, like really excited,
Yeah,
to get this information out because without the right information, people are just out here either not taking advantage of this opportunity or taking advantage of it in the wrong way.
gotcha. Or being taken advantage of. How about
Exactly.
that?
That too. Yep. All three. All three.
So before we get into talking about the EIDLs and the PPP loans, talk to me a little bit about you and your background. Where'd you grow up? I always ask people. I'm very interested in like where people grew up and how they ended up where they are.
Yeah. I'm from up top. So I'm a DC girl, Washington, DC, born and raised. And I also claim New Jersey. I spent my my college years in New Jersey. So I claim both. Born and raised in DC, but I spent a considerable amount of my early adulthood in New Jersey. So um, have a degree in accounting that I received from St. Peter's University back in the back in 2000 actually, and have been in the financial management, corporate accounting industry for 22 years. So
You look like a baby. Have you been doing anything for 22 years?
I
You
know,
started when you were like 4, right?
but I was like just a little infant, just out there counting people's money. So, but yeah, I started my career at about 18, 19 years old. I worked for Merrill Lynch in New York City prior to 9/11. So that's where I got my start in finance. So I got a really good kind of introduction to corporate accounting, how business works, how numbers impact the way businesses operate, just the whole nine. I got it from that incredible experience when I was 19 and I hadn't turned back. So I did about 12 years or so in corporate accounting, worked for some major large firms in New York City, and then in New Jersey. And then when my family me, and I moved to North Carolina, that's when I went to start working with small businesses and entrepreneurs. And so kind of bringing that big corporate knowledge to small businesses, and that's kind of been my focal point, and that's the focal point of my firm, Sage 22. We are a strategic management firm, and we basically help entrepreneurs, CEOs really kind of make managerial decisions of how they going to grow, expand, and our entryway into doing that is through financial management. So we use the tools of proper financial management, teaching business owners how to actually understand their numbers, and how those numbers can help you make different management decisions. So,
Yeah, that's good stuff. That's good stuff. You made a good point of bringing your corporate knowledge, big company knowledge to, smaller businesses. I mean, you have a firm, so therefore you're an entrepreneur. So I'm sure you've tapped into some of the things that you learned working in corporate America. And I was just on a clubhouse the other day, and the piece of advice that I gave people was to whatever you're doing now, wherever you're working now, take information, take knowledge, treat whatever part of that company that you're responsible for, pretend like it's your small business, right? And so you can get into having an entrepreneur mindset while you're working in corporate America, and you can learn so much that will benefit you at some point in the future. So that's awesome to hear that's how you help people now, help small businesses now.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, so the people that you work with, how has the pandemic affected the small businesses that you work with?
Well, it's actually kind of helped them kind of through the spectrum. So for some of my clients and peers, the pandemic has ironically helped their business because of the type of work that they do. They're considered recession proof in a way. So being in a recession proof type industry, you're always in demand, and sometimes you're in higher demand. So the biggest challenges that they've been having is how to navigate through um, being able to take advantage of like these stimulus packages that have been offered to small businesses, how to take advantage of them so that they can kind of shore up their businesses to continue to be recession proof. And how can they navigate through cash flow crunches, even though they may be a business that does well during this type of recession. However, some of their customers or their clients may be experiencing some difficulties. And so how do they manage cash flow? Has come up for some clients and peers. So that's a lot of what I've been experiencing. I've had some of my clients have multiple businesses. So on one end, they may be doing really well or doing okay, I should say. But on the other end, another business of theirs, they may have had to close down as a result of this pandemic. So they're again in that same kind of space of how do we manage cash flow, and then how do we leverage the opportunity that this unfortunate experience, of being in this pandemic, has brought us. It's like this irony of like, we're in the best of times and the worst of times at this exact same time. So it all depends on the perspective you're in. So they're trying to figure out how do they pivot, how do they make decisions, and how do they manage cash flow now that we find ourselves in this space. So I've been able to, with my clients, to just be able to coach them, kind of think strategically with them about ways to use the funding if they are eligible for it, how to be smart about it, and how to find ways to explore different business opportunities now that we're in this space. Because I feel like this space is kind of giving people the opportunity to think more strategically, which is always good. It makes me excited and happy because now people are thinking deeper about their businesses, deeper about the types of services that they're offering, and much more deeper about kind of like their place in this, the grand scheme of entrepreneurship. Meaning like it's not just about me anymore as the owner, but other people. How can I serve other people better?
Yeah, that is a great point. I know me personally in our business, we've had to become more creative. We've had to pivot. We've had to think through different strategies, to help us continue to grow and not use the pandemic really as an excuse. So that's an awesome point. And I know people who have told me, folks that I work with, other small businesses, they've told me that 2020 was their best year, in spite of, and that's because they were forced to actually become more creative and to think strategy and things like that. So
Yeah.
restaurants, they have it really, really tough. And if they haven't made any changes or look to, pivot and become more creative, a lot of those folks won't survive. So becoming strategic, thinking through how can I do something different? How can I build a better mousetrap? Is definitely something that people should be exercising for sure.
Hmm.
And it's good to hear that you guys are helping people with that.
Oh yeah, having a great
So
time with it too.
that's good. That's good. So I think it was today. Um, Uncle Sam said that they reintroduced or they opened up the period to apply for PPP loans. Is that true?
That is true.
All
It
right.
started yesterday. And there's
Was it
again,
yesterday?
huh?
Was it yesterday?
Yeah, it was the 11th, but
Okay.
it kind of they've been doing it kind of in stages. So some lenders weren't able to offer the loan until today, but there were
Okay.
some others that were already able to yesterday.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
So let's take a step back because we're here to talk about a couple opportunities that small businesses can take advantage of to help them through this time. So, um, and I just threw out an acronym. So PPP. Tell us what a PPP loan is.
that's right. Okay, so PPP stands for Paycheck Protection Program. Okay, I have to say that slow because sometimes I just butcher that myself, but it stands for Paycheck Protection Program. And this is actually the third iteration of this program. This was the first one that came out earlier, right in the beginning of the pandemic. And Congress did 2 rounds of that earlier in 2020. And then the program ended because all the funds ran out. And so now, December 27th, 2020, before the end of the year, um, uh, it was approved again for a third round. So now this third round has become open effective January 11th or 12th. And yes, I see a comment here that minority, and I have to be clear, the term that the federal government is using is minority small businesses are able to take advantage of this program first. Okay, so I haven't seen a lot of official from the SBA that says Black, but I've seen a lot that says minority, and I think that's a really important distinction to make because minority can include other groups other than Black people. Um, so, however, the target is minority and women owned small businesses. So that means if you, and the target also is low income communities as well. So if, hey Letitia, so if you fall into any of those kind of categories, you are in what they are saying is you're kind of in front of the line. So you're able to take advantage of this loan with kind of cut through the line and the red tape and get your information in kind of fast. The other piece of this part two of the PPP loan is that they're opening this up to small community financial institutions before they're allowing bigger banks to give this loan. And the reason why they're giving this loan, and I'll talk more about the loan itself, is because they found that again for minorities, small businesses, women-owned businesses, and those in low-income communities, they found that some of us are not privy or have been having fair practices. When we are going to larger banks, we assume that because we are with a larger bank for 15 years that we have a relationship, but we're finding out that we actually don't have a relationship when it's come to get this loan. So a lot of smaller banks are getting more access to the funds to be able to give to minority owned businesses.
I remember. So last time that it was available, my company we took advantage of PPP loans, right? And so, but what was disheartening is we've had a relationship with our bank for many years. We actually had our application in at 12:01 a.m. the day that they said that you can apply. But I know people that got way more money and got their money much faster than we got our money. And then I saw a stat that was just staggering to the tune of, I think it was less than 10% of the PPP funds actually went to minority owned businesses. So I hope, have you heard anything about, or do you know anything about things that they've done to correct this outside of saying that, minority owned businesses get first dibs at this money?
The only other thing that I've heard is that they have lowered the cap. Before you can get $10 million. And now they've reduced that to 2 million. Um, uh, so the criteria has changed a little bit. The more you're able to get kind of signifies. So the amount, let me back up. The amount that you're able to borrow is more directly connected to your actual payroll numbers. So a larger business will, with a lot of employees, would more naturally have a larger payroll. So a small business that has 10, 20 employees has a smaller payroll. And so since there is just a certain amount of money in the pot for this loan, if you have businesses with 500 employees getting $10 million, you're shrinking the pot quick.
Right.
So
Right.
it's what they've done is they've lowered the amount that can be borrowed, and they've also lowered the maximum number of employees that you can have. So
Okay.
before it was 500, now it was 300, and before it was 10 million, now it's two. But the thing is though that the SBA, the federal government defines small businesses. 300 employees is considered a small
Right.
business. So
Exactly. Well, I
$25
think
million
it could be doing 50 million. They could be doing 50 million in revenue, and they're
exactly,
considered a small
and
business.
still considered a small business. So they're trying, but I still think we're going to still find some issues, because what they haven't done, and which I think, this is kind of my opinion, what the federal government always tends to not do really well is really being very specific about who they are wanting to help. So here's another piece of this too. I think is part of their way of trying to help this is that they are offering $10,000 grants that really are only targeting small businesses. So there's a $10,000 grant through I believe it's both. It's the EIDL grant, and that EIDL grant is offered to any business up to 10 employees. You get $10,000. So
Right.
that
Before,
if you
before we before we go there,
okay.
what I want to do is I want to so because we have some folks starting to ask questions, and we'll make sure we get every single one of these questions answered. But I want to take me back to I'm a small business, and I apply for this PPP loan, and I can use this money for payroll, right? Can
Correct.
I use this money for anything else other than payroll?
Yes, you can.
Okay, what else do I use the money for?
You can use it for operational expenses in your business and under certain
Okay,
categories. So you can use it for payroll and then payroll related expenses, like health insurance, uh, uh, to pay, of course, payroll taxes is part of that number as well. Additionally, you can use that to cover some operational expenses. Before, I believe the cap was 60% has to be for payroll, and the other 40%
yep,
be for other expenses. So you can use a part of that money, the difference. You can use that for operational expenses. Like this is how the SBA is defining it. They're saying for like your accounting services, any type of expenses that you had to incur to pretty much bring your business online. So
yep,
any like cloud computing, Zoom, any expenses related to you needing to pivot your
right,
business. And then if you are a restaurant, you get a little more money, a little bit more flexibility with how you use the money. And if you are a live venue, meaning you had a physical live venue site, you get a little bit more flexibility in how you can use your money there too. But yes,
okay,
you don't have to use all 100% of that money on just payroll. You have some flexibility to cover operating expenses.
gotcha. Okay, so now I know what I can use the money for, mostly payroll, but some other operating expenses. So how do I apply for a PPP loan?
Okay, so you apply for the PPP loan through a participating lender. Okay, so and that official list of lenders is on the SBA's website. So this is the information I give my customers and clients. There's groups where people are just throwing other stuff out listen, I go where the official information is. So I direct everyone to the SBA, the Small Business Administration's website, sba.gov.
Go.
And
Yep.
that's where you can get the actual list of participating vendors that the SBA has vetted, and are allowed to give out or uh, do the lending for this loan.
Gotcha. So if I want to know, first I go to SBA.gov and I can find the participating financial institutions. But can I? Do you recommend me just calling up my financial institution saying, "Hey, are you guys participating in the PPP loans?" Because I would suggest that people use their financial institutions and not a different one. And I'm gonna talk out the other side of my neck because they have a relationship. But I've actually, on the other hand, I've seen smaller, like really small institutions that are participating. They seem to get the paperwork and the application process much quicker. What's
Mhm.
been your experience with that?
That the part two of that, the smaller institutions are the community banks, like the self-helps, and those type of banks are moving faster because they don't have as much, they have a smaller clientele that they're working with. um, it's never a problem to call your own bank and to inquire about their ability to help you with that loan. But again, I would go through a lender that I know has already been approved, and or a small local bank to help me so that I don't have to deal with, again, being in a long line to get things done. There's caveats to that though. Well, one piece of information is that as you're preparing to apply, you can actually download the application form from the SBA's website yourself and do the application, and start working on it. So you don't have to wait um, to see the bank to actually start the process.
Gotcha. Okay. And so, um, how long should one expect for the application process to happen and get approved or not for the loan?
So that's a question for the bank. I'm not really sure how long, because I've had people go through the process and get responses within days, some weeks, some months. Um, so I think it's one of those things. Like I said, I was saying right before we went live that things. This is still a moving target, and um, no one really has like that very specific answer for that type of question.
Gotcha. Yeah, and I think it depends of just the bank and their processes because some of them move much quicker than others. So yeah, you're dead on point right there. So then I get my money, I get my check, or I get my deposit higher, and so when do I have to pay this money back?
You say, when do we have to pay it back?
Yeah, when do I have to pay this PPP loan money back?
So part of the PPP loan is actually forgivable if you can prove that you have used the funds according to the fund, the loan terms. You can have that loan forgiven, meaning you don't have to pay it back. If you have not used the funds, you do have to pay it back, and they give you 12 months, a grace period, and then you'll be able to pay. Well, you'll be in the position where you'll need to pay that loan back after a year.
Gotcha. So basically, if you spend the money the way you're supposed to spend the money, I think someone just actually posted, asked that question or made that comment. If you spend the money the way you're supposed to spend the money, then it's forgivable.
Correct.
But if you don't, then you probably have to pay that money back.
Exactly. That's simple.
Gotcha. Which is not. I mean, I guess it's good to help you, but then I would much rather do the right thing and pay it back than
Exactly.
I mean, and not have to pay it back than to have to pay it back.
Yeah.
All right, good deal. We got a couple questions about the PPP, so let's kind of respond to some of those. Somebody asked about Let's go way back here. Somebody asked about the links to get to it. Are the links the same as they were from last year?
Um, the SBA website, yes. The link to
SBA.
mhm. And I
Yeah,
can,
like you said, just go there, go to the SBA, and then I actually posted the link in the comments.
yep.
If we need somebody to post that link in the comments, I put the website, but I'm not sure it came up as a link. Um, Somebody asked about the your credit score. Like, are they less stringent on the credit score being um, let's get the exact question. Are they more lenient during this time with lower credit scores?
For the PPP, it's not based on your credit score. The EIDL loan is. So for PPP, they're not, from my understanding and knowledge, they're not utilizing credit scores.
Gotcha. All right. So that's pretty much the PPP loan, and we'll see if anybody has any questions a little bit later. But I think we hit all the questions for the PPP loan. But yeah, it's a pretty simple process, and I actually heard people say, "No, I'm not going to apply because it's too hard, or it's too much to go through, too much paperwork, or whatever." But it's really not that difficult. Like you said, go to the SBA.gov website, and they'll walk you through the process. And then your bank, if they're a decent bank, they'll also help with the process.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right. Let's talk about the EIDL. Now, the EIDL, there's a loan component and a grant component, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Exactly.
Explain the difference between the loan piece and the grant piece.
Okay. So that I mean I had mentioned that earlier. So the grant piece is the $10,000 grant that you're able to get, which is yeah, so the $10,000 is $1,000 per employee of your business you're able to get. That is not repayable. You don't have to pay that back. It's immediately forgiven. Um, and however, you can still borrow additional funds in addition to that $1,000 grant, $1,000 per employee. There's a misconception floating around that people are getting $10,000 grants, like every business. And I had to Google this and research and read myself to make sure I was reading right. That I remember my, how to my
Yeah,
like I
I actually heard that as well. So I'm glad you're clearing
well
that up.
I actually I pulled it up because I'm like, am I? So what people are misreading is that they're saying that there is a full $10,000 grant, but right before that sentence it says the SBA later determined that those grants would be made in an amount of $1,000 per employee up to $10,000. So there's a $10,000 grant. The full 10,000 is if you have 10 or more employees. If you have 9 employees, you'll get 9,000. 8, you get 8,000, etc., etc. If you have 1 employee, meaning you are your only employee, you get $1,000. So I'm reading this now on the SBA's website. I
Gotcha.
think the language is a little convoluted, but um, that's what that is. There's not again, there's not a $10,000
You
grant.
get 10,000 if you have 10 employees.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. But most single member, businesses are assuming that they get 10,000. And
Right.
no, it's 1,000.
Right. So let's take one step back as well on this one, and let's talk about like what can I use this money for? The EIDL money.
So this one is a little less specific, and it has a lot of gray area, and the federal government has still yet to be very clear on what this money can be used for. So they just say it's operating expenses, and to recover any losses that you may have incurred during this coronavirus pandemic. So you can use it to cover mortgage, rent. You can use it to cover debts, any outstanding vendor debts that you may have. You can use it to cover, again, like if you've had to pivot your business from, maybe being an offline business to an online business. you can use it for different things. And I've been telling clients and peers that you can also use this money as kind of like a cash flow floating for, to kind of float cash. So if you don't have to touch it immediately, but you do need to have, you need to be able to cover some cash flow needs in the future, you can have the money for that as well. You can use it to cover payroll. So it's more gray area in there. It's more about what you should not use it for than what you should. So it's not to like pay
Go
to
buy go buy a truck,
exactly. No, we're
go
not
buy
buying. You're
a
not
TV
supposed
or furniture, or something like
exactly.
that. I shouldn't do that.
No, you shouldn't do that. You shouldn't use it to. Someone asked me, "Can you use it to buy to invest in the stock market?" And I'm like, No, no,
Yeah,
that's not. This is
probably not a good idea. Yeah,
not a
it is. It's very great. I actually read something that says to meet financial obligations. I mean, you can throw a whole bunch of stuff into that
you can
financial
throw a whole.
obligation bucket.
At one
So,
point, they
so
said you
that's
could. I'm sorry.
no, I was gonna say that's the. I think the best advice you just gave was make sure you don't use it for something that has nothing to do with your business.
Correct.
So be more concerned on, not using it, for the wrong things. So, in terms of the payment terms,
Mm-hmm.
so as I understand it, if I don't qualify for the EIDL, which stands for Economic Injury Disaster Loan, if I don't qualify for that, they'll offer. I mean, I'm sorry, if I don't qualify for the grant, they'll offer me a loan where it's a pretty low interest rate loan.
Mm-hmm.
They amortize it out like for 30 years, so
30
the payment
years.
is pretty small.
Yeah.
So can I get both the PPP loan and the EIDL loan?
Yes, you can. Absolutely. So back up just a little bit with this third round of the PPP loan. It's open for first time borrowers for now. So if you got the PPP loan before, you can get a second PPP loan. And if you did not get the EIDL loan the first time, if you did not, you can apply for an EIDL loan now. And so that meaning you can get both. You can get both of those loans. However, you can only get one EIDL loan per business, but you can get two PPP loans per business.
Gotcha. Okay. But it's separate applications.
Yes,
I still go through SBA.gov.
correct.
I need to make sure I'm using the money for the right reason. I'm using it for operational expenses. I'm using it for um, payroll. I'm not using it to go buy TVs for the office. I'm not using it to go buy a new truck. That kind of thing, which I think
Correct.
is really really important.
Yeah.
All right. So James asked a question. Um, Hold on, that's not James's question. He asked a question about like I just happen to know that James is a realtor, right? So
Mm-hmm.
for individuals like oh no, that is the question. Can you touch on the I think it's EIDL as it relates to a non-payroll business?
So are you saying like meaning for
Well,
non-payroll?
let's say you're self-employed. So let's
Oh, I
say
got
he has a real estate
you.
brokerage company, but he doesn't have payroll. I'm assuming that's what you mean, James. If it's something different, let us know.
So the way the EIDL is set up, is if you are a sole proprietorship, the way the EIDL is set up is they give you about 6 months of operating expenses based on the amount of revenue that you report. So in your case, James, if you are a business of one and you apply for EIDL, and let's say you said your annual revenue was $100,000 and you got $50,000, which represents 6 months of operating expenses, then the assumption that the SBA is making is that whatever expenses you paid out of that, $100,000, you would pay those same expenses with the funding that they're giving you. That's the assumption. So If you had to pay, if your business paid a car, part of your car payment, if you was already working from home and you used part of your home for work, your vehicle for work, you had to buy printer paper, pay your cell phone bill. Though if that's part of your regular business operating expenses, then that will be what the assumption is, you will be spending using those funds for those same expenses.
Gotcha. That makes sense. Let's see. We got another question here. Frankie asked, should I apply for both loans with the plan for them to be forgiven? And what's the forgiveness criteria?
So the forgiveness part is only for the PPP loan. And so the PPP loan has the forgiveness, if you, like we talked about before, if you utilize the funds the way that it is intended to be used, then it can be forgiven, and you have to apply for forgiveness and then be approved for it. That is a whole different kind of process, but you have to apply for that forgivable part for your PPP loan to be forgiven. For the EIDL, if you receive the grant, that is immediately forgiven. So you don't have to do anything. No one has to do anything for the grant for EIDL except apply. If you are a first-time EIDL applicant, I believe if you did not get the EIDL grant the first time, if you already applied, you can apply for the grant, but you may not obviously get a loan. So yeah, the forgiveness is only for PPP. EIDL in general is not forgivable, only just that first $1,000 per employee that you get.
Gotcha. That's helpful. Do any of these loans require any type of collateral?
So the collateral, yes and no. Okay, so the EIDL only requires collateral if you borrow over $25,000. However, that's what the official language is. I've seen that they've only asked for collateral or asked for more documentation if you borrow over 150,000. So, but if it's under that amount, the document says 25,000, but I haven't heard anyone needing to send more documents for that. But yeah, over 150,000 or over 25,000, according to the official language, you could be asked to provide collateral.
Gotcha. Got another question here. Well, applicants who were approved the first time, but money ran out, funding ran out, do they need to apply again?
And this is for the PPP. If it's for PPP, yes, definitely apply. Again, if it's for the EIDL and there was no funding left, the funding for EIDL never ran out. So I'm assuming this is for PPP. So yes, apply again if you did not get it the first time.
Gotcha. Good deal. Someone just says, if you are a hub certified, they may, I'm assuming, do webinars to help like they did last year's. Okay. So assuming if you're hub certified, then you can, there are webinars to help, I guess, through hub, the hub certification folks. Mm-hmm. I'm assuming that's what that means. Wow. So the takeaways for me, sounds pretty easy to apply. Find a financial institution, go to sba.gov for both the PPP and the EIDL. Cross all the T's, dot the I's, and then when you get the money, use it for what you're supposed to use the money for: payroll, operating expenses. If there was some type of hardship that you experienced that's directly related to business, you can use for those type things, and then have ultimately have the money forgiven, and go through the process. Again, I've heard people say, "I'm not going to do it because it's hard." Minority businesses didn't get the money last time. I don't expect we're going to get it this time. But again, you have to apply, and it sounds like a lot of this stuff is employee related. So if you have, is this for any business formation, Katrina? So LLC, S Corp, C Corp, as long as you have. What about sole proprietors as well?
Absolutely. This is definitely for sole proprietors. The majority of small businesses are sole proprietorships. So if you are a sole proprietorship, this is definitely for you. Corporations and LLCs, S corps. If you have partners, all business entities are eligible for these to take advantage of both of these programs.
Great. Somebody says here you can ask for an increase for EIDL loan. Email to that place
Yes.
and that place, and in the subject put increase. So it's just a matter of if you got approved, you can ask for more money just
Yeah. Yeah.
without going through another application process.
Right. So you may not necessarily, you may still be asked more questions. Now it's not like, hey, give me some more money, and they just throw you some money. Oh, ain't no problem. How much you? No, you still got to go through the process, but you don't have to do another application. So you can ask and hope that you can get more, but you can request more money.
Gotcha. That's good stuff. And then we'll take this very last question, and then please you get on the post. Please ask questions in the comments, and we'll make sure that Katrina takes some time to kind of go through and answer your questions. But this last question: are LLC owners considered employees?
So LLC owners, you're considered the owner, but all of your income is taxable income. So it's you're not an employee, but you are receiving salary from your own business, if that makes sense. So an LLC is a disregarded entity. So hi, you are taxed like a I just turned around and I was like,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I got feedback on my other phone. I was
Oh,
like,
that's
what
okay.
happened? Oh, excuse me. Hold on, Rod. I apologize.
Yeah,
I think
that's okay.
on my phone, I'm like, why am I hearing voices?
I think you just hear voices. I think you just hear voices. I don't think they're really there. Nobody else heard them. I
No
think
one
you're the only
heard
person
that?
who heard.
Okay, good. I did. I apologize. Anyway,
Nah, I heard. I know I heard them, so I'm assuming other people heard them too.
okay.
But the other thing with the LLC, when you form an LLC, an LLC is formed with members, and so the members own a portion of the LLC. So if you got two members and each one they have 50% ownership, kind of based on what your operating agreement says, then you're a member, you own it. Now that doesn't mean you have to be an employee of the company,
Correct.
but if you're an employee of the company, you went through the process, you did the W-9, you received W-2s, etc. Then you become an employee of the company. So just because you form an LLC doesn't mean technically you're an employee of the
Right.
company until you become an employee of the company and you go through the necessary process to actually become an employee of the company.
Right. But that being said, I'm assuming the user's asking, the person's asking to know if those funds are, I guess, eligible for PPP funding. You can still use your LLC, your draw, the income you receive from your business, as as an owner, as part of the funding, the documentation that you submit to request the payroll loan. So you can use LLC owners can use that money to say, yes, this is what I've paid myself, through the business as part of your loan request.
Gotcha. That's good stuff, man. Thank you so much, Katrina Harrell. I
Yeah.
appreciate you. I appreciate you. It's been some good stuff, man. Man, if y'all not taking advantage of, our group and the kind of information that we bring you, shame on you. Make sure you tag somebody on the post that you'll see about this. If they're a business owner, every single business owner should have been in the room tonight. So again, Katrina, I want to thank you for taking the time out to share with the folks, to share with me, to share with the folks in our group. Definitely appreciate it. You brought the smoke as it relates to the information. So thank you to all the group members. If you have additional questions, make sure you ask those questions in the comments on the post. Katrina, we'll just ask you just to kind of peruse those and or even tag Katrina so she'll know that there's a question there, and then she can go um, reach out and respond to your question. So please do that. And Katrina, I'm starting to ask people this last question. You being a small business owner yourself, entrepreneur yourself, where do you see yourself 5 years from now?
I see myself 5 years from now having built multi-dimensional wealth, meaning wealth for myself, my family, and for my community. I see my business having funded its own foundation, and our foundation is making moves in the communities that I believe in and love. Um, so yeah, that's what I see myself in 5 years. That's an easy question.
I love it. I love it. You got a wealth component and a give component. So I know it's going to happen. I
Yep.
know it's going to happen. So again, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Thanks everyone in the group. What's better than one black millionaire? Continue to support, share this information, share the post, invite your friends and your family in the group. Yeah, if they're business owners, great. If they're not business owners, everybody is benefiting from this collective movement. We're all about sharing information, helping each other, arm in arm. Uh, more than anything, we need this today
Yeah.
to go to the next level because there are some people in our group that can definitely help you. You can help us. Everybody can lend a hand to helping us grow as a group. So thanks again, everyone. And with that, Katrina, I'm gonna say good night.